Sociopath Kidnapper in Supermarket Parking Lot. My husband and I were at the supermarket, and our baby was being especially fussy, so he took her for a quick drive. The motion usually calms her down. It only took about 10 minutes to settle her. I was still in the store, unsure how much longer I'd be, and there's poor cell reception inside. So, he pulled back into the parking lot to wait for me. It was an unseasonably nice day, so he took her, still in her car seat, to sit on one of the benches outside the store. He took a business call and had just sat them down, absent-mindedly rocking the carrier, when a woman, well-dressed, mid-30s, average height, fit build, approached them. It's not uncommon for people to ask to play with our baby. She has big rosy cheeks, soft wisps of golden hair, and the most adorable, gurgly, toothless grin, especially when she's deep into a good nap. But her nap schedule is paramount, so my husband was preparing to tell the woman she couldn't play with the baby right then. She walked directly toward them, brimming with nonchalant confidence, and before he could even finish his sentence explaining that the baby was napping and shouldn't be touched, the woman picked up the carrier and started walking off. He was in shock for a moment, not fully believing someone would be bold enough to do something so sinister in plain daylight. He said, "Excuse me," put her down as panic began to mount. She remained calm the entire time, but when he called after her, she started walking away more briskly than when she'd approached. He ran full speed, trying to grab the carrier out of her hands, finally resorting to restraining her arms. The woman began yelling, "Help! He's trying to take my baby. Kidnapping. 911. Help!" She kicked him in the shin and pulled a pink bottle of pepper spray out of her handbag. Of course, no one in the parking lot had seen the earlier interaction. They assumed he really was a kidnapper, a lone man in a Deadpool t-shirt versus a petite, well-dressed woman. Immediately, a man knocked my husband to the ground and began holding him down. He could hear bystanders encouraging the woman to file a police report, but she was doing a very convincing job of acting shaken up and insisted she just wanted to get home. To make matters worse, she was driving a minivan. He was in a raw state of panic, realizing the entire parking lot had banded together to inadvertently facilitate the kidnapping of our daughter. He was begging and pleading with them, but no one was listening. They just kept screaming at him that the jig was up, and he needed to lie still, wait for police, and stop terrorizing a young mother. My husband finally had the idea to show them family pictures on his phone. But, too panicked to think clearly, this came out as him shouting, "I have pictures of the baby on my phone." Which, of course, everyone interpreted as him having either stalking photos or worse, inappropriate images of the baby. At that point, a man, and I can't entirely blame him, considering what he thought was happening, kicked my husband as hard as he could in the ribs. That was when I came out of the store and saw what was happening. I thought he was being robbed. I started yelling for security, my chest so tight with panic that I could barely get sound out. Then I realized he didn't have our baby with him. When I saw a woman holding the baby, I was actually relieved. I thought she had intervened to move our daughter out of harm's way while my husband was being attacked. I assumed she was walking away to get help. I couldn't find a security guard outside, so I ran up to the people holding my husband down, waving my wallet and pleading, "Take everything you want, just let us go." One of the men said something like, "Lady, we need to wait for the police to deal with him." I was confused. Why would muggers have called the police? I kept stammering, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" Then I heard someone say, "He tried to abduct that woman's kid." I didn't understand. I was sure I'd misheard. My husband would never hurt a child, and we already have 4 kids. If he were ever going to commit a crime, bringing home another kid would be at the bottom of his list. I kept trying to make sense of what was happening, and suddenly, it all clicked. I looked around for the woman with the carrier, and she was already halfway across the parking lot. I went into total mama bear mode, literally leapt out of my heels and sprinted. I'm not a fighter. I've never even taken a self-defense class. So all I could think to do was grab her by the hair and squeeze her throat with my other hand. It didn't do much. She was still trying to get away even as I grappled with her. Amazingly, none of the bystanders had yet realized my husband was telling the truth, that this woman was actually kidnapping my baby. I yanked on her hair as hard as I could, and that was enough to make her drop the carrier. I was so scared and so shocked that I threw myself on top of it, covering the entire thing with my body, and stayed there without saying or doing anything else. The woman left. Not one person tried to stop her, even though she was clearly leaving without the child she claimed was hers, which should have been a dead giveaway. Within minutes, the police arrived. Even then, several bystanders insisted my husband had been trying to kidnap the baby. To my horror, the police seemed to assume the woman must not have had bad intentions. Their first questions weren't investigative, they were thinly veiled attempts to convince me not to press charges. Still, they managed to place some of the blame on my husband. A small sampling of what they asked: do your husband and the baby look dissimilar? Could she have thought he was abducting the baby and was trying to intervene? Could your husband have been doing something inappropriate or violent that made her feel compelled to step in? Did she seem groggy or confused? Could she have mistaken them for her own family? They spent more time verifying that the baby was ours than they did acknowledging that she wasn't hers. At that point, my husband called his brother, who works in an office with several lawyers. He connected us with one immediately, who gave us priceless advice: get every officer's name and badge number, request copies of the store's security tapes right away, and escalate our complaint if the responding officers weren't taking us seriously. Finally, we began to feel like we were being taken seriously. We went home and just shook and cried until it was time to pick up our other kids from school. My husband is still seething with rage and struggling with helplessness over how little he could do. He has 2 cracked ribs from when the man kicked him. To the officers' credit, they did ask if he wanted to press charges, but since the man genuinely believed he was helping and apologized profusely when the truth came out, my husband declined. Amazingly, and frustratingly, even after the truth was clear, some bystanders still gave my husband dirty looks. One even told police to involve CPS to verify the baby was really ours. To the parking lot kidnapper and the parking lot skeptics, you better hope we never meet again.